So you, in many ways, were a pioneer by working with your fellow employees, pardon me, as partners and as people who you wanted to empower their economic freedom and prosperity.
It's one evolutionary process, right? The more
Hmm.
I shared, the more monies we made, the more monies I made. Okay, it's sort of an amazing thing, which I was involved in evolution, what you could do, huh?
Hmm. So you are really advocating in many ways a win-win opportunity. So
Yes.
I did want to pick up on some additional issues here that you have spoken out about because you certainly write a number of columns across the national media. One has to do with the impacts that so-called technology, including artificial intelligence, may have on productivity. It's interesting. I noticed in today's economic Wall Street Journal an interesting article about copper goes cuckoo in the sense that there's a lot of demand and investment in copper commodities as all this technology growth, including in terms of computer farms and the demands for artificial intelligence skyrocket. Will technology, is that part of the answer to improving our productivity?
Well, the technology or IA, look, you can't grow tomatoes with IA only, right? You still need common
Hmm.
sense. You still have farming sense. Yeah, those are new tools which should make life a little easier, right? Which
Hmm.
where people have to maybe work less hours, right? But that's another thing here. Yeah, it doesn't seem that way that the upper class wants to share. Okay,
Hmm.
because now it's practically impossible for a young couple to buy a house. Huh? I mean, years 30, 40, 50 years ago, an ordinary couple, he might have been a plumber, she might have been a
Hmm.
teacher or the other way around. They could afford to buy a house. Not anymore. Okay. And the real thing, as I said then, huh? If we, our debt, what do we leave behind to our kids, to the
Hmm.
future young Canadians, right? It just doesn't work. And
Hmm.
to me, it's now uh, the increase of the debt, the increase of the
Hmm.
bureaucracy, the increase of the import. To me, it's like Canada is like a freight train going down the hill without brakes, huh? Okay, so we got. I want to. There, I have no agenda, right? I have a certain age,
Hmm.
which I just. But the country's been great to me, right? It's such a great. Canada should be the role model for the world. What we could do.
Indeed.
So I just want to provoke the minds and remind the thing here.
Hmm.
Look, we have one chance. Let's line up behind small business and let's build things in Canada again.
Right on. And I think your point earlier, it's almost like you're giving us powerful reality therapy, is that government time and time again has made policy that has undermined small business, undermined free enterprise and the prosperity of our country. And that has put us in a situation where our standard of living, our quality of life is declining, and we can see it all in plain sight. Whether people can't find a house, they see all kinds of people dying on the streets that are homeless. I mean, they see energy costs spiraling out of control. You have a situation where we have a federal government whose primary mission is to put oil and gas, the industry in our country, out of business. Does that make sense to you?
Well, funny thing, oil and gas, they get a lot of subsidies. You know, we're
Mm.
subsidizing the greenhouse gases. Okay.
Hmm.
You know, when you think, I've gotten into the agriculture, right? The more I got into the agriculture, the more I could see this huge chemical jungle. And then 95% of all the foods eaten comes from industrial farms. On
Hmm.
industrial farms, you see no more eagles fly. Why? We
Hmm.
poison everything with fungicide and pesticides. There's no more
Hmm.
rabbits. There's no more pheasants. So we poison everything. All our kids have allergies. Stage 2 diabetics is enormously on the rise. So is autism. Okay, we have major problems. Politics can't fix it.
Hmm. But in this case, we have a situation where in all the climate change modeling, we have a 1 degree difference in temperature over 80 years. We have a situation where taxing carbon dioxide, which is critical for growing agriculture, including in greenhouses. Does that make any sense?
Well, yeah, I think we nature can take care of itself, right? I
Hmm.
mean, the large industrial farms where you grow maybe 500 acres or 1,000 acres of one crop, there's no biodiversity. Okay, so we have to, look, we cannot be God, huh? Okay.
Hmm.
Problem is when human beings think that they are smarter than God, right? I'm not overly religious. I believe in
Hmm.
a higher being, okay? Because a snake was a snake a million years ago, a worm was a worm a million years ago, and I'm not looking down on a snake because they all play a role that the universum can function, right? If you step on purpose on a
Hmm.
worm, right, you adding to the destruction of the thing here, right? So, but when you think you're smarter than God, you run into problems.
I think that's a very wise point. So, as we kind of get towards the end of our discussion, Frank, and it's been a really quite a terrific, far reaching discussion, I want to talk a little bit about culture and its relationship to the economy, prosperity. Um, I noticed that there's this week a Leger Soul survey or poll came out, and it was a very interesting poll. It said some 60% of Canadians believe that freedom of speech is now under threat in this country. And 78%, almost 80%, said they feel uncomfortable sharing basic thoughts and ideas and opinions with fellow Canadians. Now, you know the importance more than anybody about the importance of a shared culture when it comes to building a company, a community, let alone a nation. Does that kind of poll concern you that so many Canadians are really not comfortable sharing their opinions about different issues? They're in effect self-censoring.
Well, look, I had factories in 34 different countries. You know, every worker might have been Poland, the Ukraine, or Portugal or France. They all understand the word profits, what it means. So you have everybody wants to do a little better that they couldn't grow up in dignity, right? Okay, so that's universal, right? We have to be very thing here. Hate speeches or many of the thing. That's a no. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I think we got to be careful. Uh, I think in Canada, you still can express yourself, but you don't have to point the fingers, right? You don't say it's the
Mhm.
fault of that and this and that,
Mhm.
right? We all a bit
Sure.
at fault for the thing here. So, uh, but as I said, right, it needs a revolution, not a destructive revolution. A
Mhm. Of
revolution
course.
of the mind, which is civilized, right? Don't destroy things, right? Where we,
Indeed.
where we, yeah, where people are more tolerant. But most of all, it comes down to you got to eliminate poverty. That's
Hmm.
really what the
Indeed.
problem is. Yeah.
So, Frank, you're the former CEO of a very successful large company called Magna International, and you're speaking up about these issues regarding the decline of the Canadian standard of living, the decline of our economy, our quality of life, and prospects for the next generation. What is your read among other senior leaders in the business community? Are they speaking up? Are they finding their voice or are they too reluctant to speak up and speak on these important issues?
Well, you have a very large thing here where you got a board of directors, where you got CEOs, where you got, in most areas, they want to keep the system going the way it is, right?
Mm.
Okay, so but the system is, if we keep on going, the capitalistic system needs harnessing, not destroying.
Hmm.
And small business, free enterprise is sort of the foundation for the capitalistic system, right? When it
Indeed.
gets larger, right, you cannot hog it all in yourself, right? You
Hmm.
gotta share with we gotta share with the workers, with the employees.
Hmm.
Okay, but so I'm recommending small business. It's pure free enterprise, right?
Hmm. Well, I certainly do appreciate your articulation of how we can renew the Canadian dream. And I very much appreciate you joining us here today, Frank. And so, one final question would be, how do we encourage action among citizens? How can they help renew this country and the Canadian dream?
Well, I started out to say I'd like to see a grassroots movement, right? And you
Hmm.
need a constituency, like small business. They're a little step up over there, right? I mean, it takes a little guts to go out and
Hmm.
do you. So I think that's the constituency. That's been the backbone, right? And we just we just gotta get them united, and say, look, you can save Canada. You save your own business. At the same time, you save Canada and make life much better for everybody else. It's the small business. Oh, and over. We gotta get them. We gotta get them aroused and be part of it. You save your own company, but you do a much greater thing. You save Canada, and you make life so much better for all Canadians.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Frank, for joining us for this far reaching conversation and for your leadership on so many fronts in terms of building. But I do want to thank you very much, Frank, for joining us for this far reaching conversation and for your leadership and your courage to be able to talk about these issues for
You
the
know,
sake of
I,
all
I was
Canadians.
exposed to situations, right? I grew up during the war as a kid, but old enough in hindsight how crazy the Nazi system was, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Then we were occupied by the Russians, right? Okay.
Hmm.
And again, old enough to see GI, because right now the United States dominated the world for the last 150 years, but the
Hmm.
United States is slipping. China is gaining.
Hmm.
I would not like to live under Chinese or Russian philosophies or, there's just no way. Even though I spent a lot of time in, we had a lot of factories, I spent
Hmm.
a lot of time we put in, right? The Putin
Hmm.
I see now on thing is not the same guy than what I've met a
Hmm.
number of years ago.
But those points of history, whether it's fascism, any of these totalitarian socialist regimes, never ever worked. And that's the lessons of history we need to remember because Canada could be a beacon of opportunity again, of small business entrepreneurship. Instead, we're on the decline. So I
Yeah,
like what you're doing to help
okay,
arrest this decline and
great.
say we are not going to put up with this anymore.
Yeah, the politicians are trapped in the system, right?
Hmm.
You take the Bolivia, right? Yeah, right.
Polyev?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I had a scholarship program, right, for many
Hmm.
years, where students right across Canada, if the university students, they had to write an essay. If I be prime minister, I would do X
Hmm.
X X.
Hmm.
He won it one time, right? The first prize was $100,000, second prize 50,000, third prize 25,000. But it did not. It just doesn't work anymore, right?
Hmm.
It,
Hmm.
politicians are trapped in a system. We got to
Right. I
change
think
the system.
okay, but Frank, I think that's a very instructive, wise insight. Is
Yes,
people don't realize the limits of government. I'll never
yes,
forget my conversation with a friend of mine, the Honorable Grant Devine, who was the former premier of Saskatchewan, and I asked him the same question: "What do we do to turn this around?" And he paused and he said, "You know, Dave, you've got to realize that when government gets too big, and it's basically over 25% of your economy, it becomes too political, becomes too complicated, and no one can manage it. It becomes almost self serving in terms of its growth and its scale and complexity." And I think what you're calling for is something similar. We don't want to be ruled by an elite rich and the few, and we don't want to be ruled by a
large
big out of
government.
control
Yes,
bureaucracy.
yes,
We need to support the middle,
exactly.
the middle class, and that's
Yes,
all related to our
yes,
incredible history that goes all the way back to Greek history, including the
yes,
Minos, where people were empowered to speak up and be citizens because they weren't dependent on the state. They were their own people.
yes. Canada could be a role model for the rest of the
Totally
world.
agree, Frank.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I like what you're saying, and so thank you so much. And we'll let's talk very soon about having you for an event. Okay.
Yes. Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.